Hello and welcome back to Stranded Deep, welcome back to Pacific Paradise, and welcome back to this item we're making. We are on the PC version of the game, the PC version of the map editor. So if you're joining us for the first time, W goes forward, S goes back, A goes left, D goes right, Q goes down, E goes up, and right click and hold pans the camera around. If you are using the terrain tools, remember that the amount slider is linked between all of your brushes, which means if you're going around the outside with a nice soft brush, making the sand nice and smooth, and then you say, well, I tell you what, I'm going to select raise and lower height, hit lower and left click. With the amount slider all the way up, you will punch a hole straight through to Cthulhu's bedroom, and because there is no undo, you're going to be, well, probably reloading your save. So save often. And just remember to turn that amount slider all the way down before you exit the tool. Anyway, last time we were working here, we put in a little rowboat. We put in a rowboat because maybe the survivors of the air crash tried to find a way off the island, and this was their method of escape. But wait, it's still here. Well, yes, but then the survivors are still here. If we go over to the little survivor camp, we can kind of see the skelly-bobs all underneath the shelters, and you might have noticed the camera stuttering slightly. That's not a frame rate issue. There is a slight issue with the game itself. So when you are moving, you hold down W and the camera speeds up and slows down seemingly at random. Well, it's not quite at random. Every time you get close to an object, the camera will slow down once you're near the object. When you're past the object, the camera will speed up again. If you have a lot of objects in the area, it kind of looks like frame rate stuttering. It's very strange. Anyway, we will need to go back and work on the aircraft because it is there, but the forest, well, it doesn't really look like a forest. And we have all this good stuff. We have the pond so that you can climb up onto the back of the DC-3 and then leap off the tail. That's good. We have the survivor camp. We have a little rowboat. We have a little vignette over here of trees that you can just kind of see the see-through, but what I was thinking we could do is perhaps pan over to this little bay here. Maybe we can make a little mangrove swamp. Yes, so what we've done is we've added a large structural element in the center of the island, the main focal point, which is the pine forest. Then we have a few vignettes off to the side, but we haven't added anything else that's that big, and because we've been working on this for a while, it kind of looks like we've not done much, even though when you pan the camera back and look at your work, we've actually done quite a bit. The island is big, like really big. Now, how big can you tell the island is? Well, it's very simple. What you do is you go to objects and you find structures and you pull out one of the doors. This big. The door is about the size of the player because the player has to fit through the door. And that means that our island is vast. And we're going to need to put a lot of stuff in it. And one of the big things that we can put in for, well, a little time cost is a mangrove swamp. So I've picked this bay because, well, mostly because at the moment the player, as they're walking around the island, will have to come in close to the pine forest in order to navigate this area. And then they'll have to come in again around this little island that we've made. I would like to add some more paths. I'd like to open this area up, but I would also like to keep the water here. And adding a mangrove swamp is one of those ways we can do that. So we can go to the terrain brush, we can select the raise and change the size down. We can change it down and then move the brush over land just to see how big the brush actually is. When you move it over water, the brush will disappear. It's just a function. I mean, it's still there, but it's just a function of the brush. We can turn the water off, but then we can't really see how high the terrain is. Adding a mangrove swamp is a little tricky because one of the things you might find is that the water mesh separates from the island mesh, which is something we're going to have to keep an eye on, and we'll see signs of that actually in the editor. The other issue is there are no mangroves in the game. There used to be mangroves, but they got removed some time ago, so we're going to be using palm trees. Also, another little bug, if we didn't address this last time, which I think we did, when you turn the ocean off, sometimes the shadows in the background are sort of moving up and down with the camera. That's just an issue with the display ocean. If that bothers you, you can just pan the camera all the way up to the sky, turn the ocean off, and then the shadows will be locked. when your ocean is off. Okay, well, with that gone through, what we need to do is we need to raise the terrain. So we have raise selected, we have the amount slider almost all the way down. The size is quite small, and we're just going to bring up some little islands so they're just poking above the water. Now, some places we're going to want dry sand, other places we're going to want wet sand. Wet sand is likely to be underwater when the tide comes in and goes out, so we'll change the time of day just to see what happens. We're going to bring these up slightly higher than we need them, because when we smooth this area off, and we will need to smooth this area off, we will be able to see if there's any bubbles appear. And the bubbles are going to be gaps in the water mesh. Those gaps you'll be able to see as a player, and unfortunately, kind of distracting. Sometimes they will happen anyway. When there's a storm, that tends to reveal flaws in the land-sea mesh. We don't need to add too many islands. I'm just finding areas where it's already fairly shallow in this bay and just bringing the land up. So just following the natural rise and fall of the terrain. I'm going to bring this up a little bit here. We have these little triangles on the shore. That is going to be a problem. There's always going to be a problem with this version of the game. When they went to 1.0, this just happened. Actually making a very smooth and gentle shoreline is very difficult these days. So I'll bring this out. I'm just going to bring this out here a little bit, because this could do with some work. That's good. Yeah, that's good. So we're just making it look a little bit more natural. So we have a nice rounded headland, but I think we can bring this out a little bit. A lot of this won't necessarily translate to... I mean, the player will accept quite a lot of what is going on anyway when you build things. I prefer things to look natural and smooth and just as if nature created it, rather than add something that looks kind of, well, like we just didn't care as a map editor. Straight lines are kind of an example of that. So we have added a bunch of little islands. So what I'm going to do is add a slightly larger brush. Not that large. That'll do. Change the amount slider up slightly. Push and hold, because I want to see the effect on the actual coast itself. Change the amount slider up to match that. And there we go, we're having some movement now. Okay, so the size of the smooth brush is important. That'll take everything under the brush and that'll normalize it, which means it's trying to equalize the height. There's some bubbles. Those bubbles are what we are trying to avoid, because in the game those bubbles will represent a gap between the water and the land. Sometimes they will disappear, like they just did, and they will usually appear in the map editor once you have edited your shoreline. So once you've moved something on the shoreline. I'm going to run around here. If we were to make the brush very big, say the size of the entire island, if that were possible, you would then just turn the island, the island would just become one normalized blob, I guess, like dropping yogurt on a countertop. So what we've done is we've added our little islands, and by smoothing everything out, we've actually pushed them down almost back into the water. That's fine. That's kind of what I wanted, because it also means that the depth between them has been reduced as well. So we're going to raise and lower, make sure the mount slider is all the way down, because that will catch us out. Go back onto the dry land and change the size. Down, if you change it too small, you'll just be raising one node on the mesh, and that's not necessarily great. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to bring them up. I'm going to have to keep doing this back and forth. If you want nice, smooth little islands, miniature islands in the swamp, then unfortunately we're going to have to ride that smooth brush. So where you have dry sand, that's what we're aiming for. They need to be large enough to allow us to put plants and rocks and things down on them, but small enough so that the water can flow freely between them. Smooth height, that will do. Now slide it down. There is a point at which you say, well, we can't really do this anymore. This is what it is. Okay. So, go around the outside and around the outside, and if there's anything you don't like the look of in terms of shape, you can always just brush it back. And we have some bubbles here, so we'll just wait and see if they snap. I don't think they will. They're hard to see, but I think this is where there's going to be a gap in the mesh, yes. How do you deal with that? Excellent question. Raise or lower. I'm going to hit lower, in fact. I'm just going to push this down slightly and then wait for those bubbles to snap away. So they may disappear. Ah, yes, they did. Okay, so that's slightly easier for the terrain to manage. And then any places where the land is just connected, I'm just going to push that back slightly. And we got some more bubbles. We have a complicated shoreline. This is just something that's going to happen, so we can push that back slightly and see if it disappears. Push this down, and again, are they going to disappear? Yep. We have a little bit of broken geometry there, little line, but I don't think that's going to matter so much. Okay, and then break that here. If they're pale, they probably won't disappear on their own, so we need to do something there. Okay, I think what we can do is lower this slightly. So we have to come in and sort of adjust these by hand. Let's do that. Okay. We're also going to need to check and make sure... Oh, it's kind of hard to see, but that is bubbles there. Yeah, just there. Just there. Wow, it's done. And more here. Are you going to go away now? Yes. Okay, good. Good. So, what do we have? Well, the inner area needs some work, because what we're going to do is hit raise, make sure the amount is correct, and then just bring this up slightly, because this whole area has a lot of little triangles on it, so we can smooth that away by just raising this up. Sometimes if you bring it up enough, the texture changes, and when the texture changes, that's enough to disguise some of the unevenness in the map, in the terrain. Okay, good. So we're just going to have to bring this up. Like I said, you will end up riding the smooth terrain brush. It's just something that happens, unfortunately. Right, and along here, and here. And then around here. So changing the direction that you're looking sometimes helps as well. Okay. Now that's fine. It's fine. But we can do some more. I'm going to hit lower. I'm going to bring this back here. And what I'm going to do is follow what we already have. Let's bring that in. So in terms of the height, this here looks like it should be its own little island. And then just sort of push in here. as if the pond were at some point connected to the ocean. So the player will just run through there, no problem. What we'll do is we'll change smooth height, change the amount slider up, left click and hold, and then reduce some of that back down. In fact, crank the slider all the way up. All the way up. There we go. There we go. That's better. Smooth out this whole new area that we've put in. Yeah. That's much more interesting. And we could probably do something here as well. So, mount slider all the way down, because you only get one shot. If you didn't, well... So we push it back down until we can see the new water come in. Now I'm just going to poke my head outwards, make sure we're not doing anything. Okay. Probably raise that around there. I don't want it to be too symmetrical. Okay. Smooth brush, crank it up. Change the size so it's slightly bigger. Smooth this all off. Okay. Good. Right, so you move in close. Everything looks okay. Everything looks okay. We're going to change the time of day. So what do we got? Low tide is here. So you can see the low tide if you put the brush over it. The brush doesn't go through the water, so you can see. And then we have high tide about here. So we lose some of the terrain. We're going to change the time of day so that it is high tide. Open up the objects and immediately go and find some rocks. Ooh, rocks. Do you ever build anything without putting rocks down? Almost never, because we have little sandy protrusions. But sand and the action of time and tide typically will mean that unless there's something there to hold the sand, it's just going to even itself off. So we have changed to high tide, which means we are much later in the day, about 4 o'clock. And we just want to add just a few rocks here and there. So terrain objects, so we don't have anything selected. Small rock 2. You're okay. You can come here. And we don't want to stop anyone walking on the island. I just want to make it look like there's a reason for this. We don't need to do this all over the place. Only a few of them need to be there. So find the toggle. Just drop it down. Okay. If it doesn't look right, then... yeah, if something doesn't fill you with joy, delete it. This is actually a nice shape, so I'm going to use that again. It's fine. Just have it poking up. We need it poking up enough so the LOD, the level of detail, if someone walks away too far away from it, it doesn't just snap into a low poly model and vanish. Good, I think that's high enough. Okay, and that's snapped onto something the other side of the island. That is snapped onto the aeroplane, which is underneath the island. So terrain and objects, so we don't accidentally move something we've placed in the past. And we are going to bring out the trees. Now, one of the things we're going to need to do immediately is bring out the palm trees. We have big palm trees. We have smaller palm trees. We have medium-sized palm trees. And we have tiny palm trees. The tiny palm tree has a problem with its LOD model. So when we move away, we can see the top of the tiny palm tree. We move close, it disappears, and then it reappears. You can put these down and they will work in-game. They will function in-game fine. So I'll get rid of that. There is another object that happens with. So if we bring out structures and we find one of the shipwrecks, I think it's shipwreck 3A. Put shipwreck 3A onto beach, we move away, it vanishes. Close, it's okay, and if you move far enough away, it should reappear. There we go. So that's the, I think that's the sprite version of the model. And then that's the full version of the model, but some of the LEDs versions are gone. They'll work fine in game. We can put one of those down and it'll be absolutely fine. So sometimes you put things down, sometimes they will disappear. If they do disappear, just save, pop your map in the game, and then just see if you can actually see it in game. It should be fine though. So we'll go back to our palm trees. We use medium palms to begin with. Wow, that palm tree looks huge. It's taken up almost the entire island. Yep, so I'm just going to snuggle that in. We're just going to snuggle these in. In fact, what we can do is put some ficus trees here as well. And the ficus trees will add to that mangrove look. So it'll be ficus tree 2, naturally. And we'll put that here. In fact, we'll put the ficus trees where the rocks are. As a design language, we've established that wherever there's a rock, there's usually a ficus tree. Rotate, and just make sure the branches are actually going out over. That's good. So we want the branches to go out over the water itself. And we'll do another one here. So terrain objects, so we don't accidentally rotate or move that. Sometimes that can happen. T to transform. R to rotate. Oh. Now we can't undo, so we have to commit. It snapped onto something else. So we can rotate this now. We're going to zoom out slightly so we don't accidentally rotate it in the same direction that we've had it over there. That's okay. There's little bubbles there. Ah, yes, there are. Tiny little bubbles. So, raise and lower. Make sure the amount slider is all the way down. Hit raise. Change the size of the brush. So it's a small brush. Very small brush. Just raise that up slightly. Is that okay? Seems like it should be okay. Right. Good. I think we'll do the same thing here and here. We'll put ficuses in. So objects, and we will do the same thing when we use. In fact, we could use the same small rock. It's a nice small rock, a decent size, shape, and structure. We can rotate it over slightly, so that when the player's running around, they don't see the same rock just put down all over the place. But it is the same rock. But if you rotate it, and so R to rotate, T to transform, and it just doesn't look like the same thing that's been used over and over again. Bring it out slightly. Fact. There, good. Good, excellent. I really wish it wouldn't snap away from the object you have selected. So there are some things I wish you could do. I wish you could hold shift and just select all the objects in an area by left clicking and dragging. I wish there was an item list that you could click on at the side of the page so you could select specifically items. I wish you could rename items or group items. That'd be so much better. But unfortunately we have what we have. So terrain objects, so we don't have anything selected. We are going to grab ficus tree 2. Do the same thing. So just kind of drop it in. Having the branch over this way is actually advantageous. So when we do the same thing here, drop it down into the ground. Okay, rotate slightly. Right, good, excellent. That is exactly what we needed. So we know we have water between all of these, because we can see the water, and we know it's high tide, so anything we put on the islands, when the tide comes in and out naturally in the game, we know that these trees aren't going to be underwater. And that's fine. We're going to go terrain objects, we're going to open up trees again, we're going to find the palm trees. And palm tree 2 is going to be our go-to here. So what I'm going to do is put the palm trees in just in areas where, so rotate that slightly, just also pop it down in the ground slightly, I'm just going to put them in areas where a palm tree might have an opportunity to grow. Palm tree 3? No, palm tree 1. Yes. Down, rotate. Terrain objects. T, transform. R to rotate. Good. So we have some difference in foliage. I like to put palm trees on the beach. In other places in the world, they might be in the center of the island, but I prefer putting palm trees on the beach as if the coconuts have just landed here. Sailing across ocean currents, and this is just where the trees happen to grow. Trees require light, so sometimes you'll find these tall trees just racing up towards the sun, even though there are established plants in the area. We don't need to put every single island with a palm tree, but sometimes we can do that. Ah, there we go. Bubbles. Terrain. Amount slider is down. Raise. Slightly small brush. I can just see what this does. Are you going to go? Are you going to pop away? No. Okay. I'm going to hit the smooth. Mount slider, well, the size is fine. Mount slider is probably also fine. And we are going to... Yep, there's a little bit of bubble there. So change the size down. Bring that up slightly. We'll never be able to get this to mesh perfectly. There's just no way. There is no way. Good, excellent. So as far as swamps go, it's looking pretty decent already. What I'm going to do is go to objects, and we're going to find the nana plant. We not nana plant. Oh yeah, gotta have a decent little nana in there. Drop you down into the sand. Make sure nothing's clipping through either the trunks. They're not. The sand's fine. The sand moves. I think that's actually all right. We'll bring it up slightly. Yeah, perfect. Pulled it out of the toolbox, straight out of the toolbox. So we can do the same thing here. Just down slightly, make sure it is touching the sand. A little rotate maybe. So it's not kind of looking the same as everything else. I probably don't want it on every single island. We can make these slightly different each time. Or, yeah, one more. So that is actually touching the sand. In terms of leaf arrangement, actually I kind of like it like that. Yeah, that's decent. Okay, good. Now, there should be a reason for people to come here. So what we're going to do is go and find our friend the yucca tree. I'm going to throw a yucca tree in here. But why would we do that? Ah, excellent question. Yucca, come with me. We're going to need to find a good place for it to be. Here looks quite nice. Because it's a renewable resource that will keep players coming here. So if they want fibrous leaves, once they've explored the island, sometimes there's no reason to come back to the thing that you've spent a long time creating. So put in a renewable resource like the yucca means that people are going to come back and have a little look at the things that you've created. They'll go, oh, I haven't been here in a while, even though I lived on the island for hundreds of days. Let's put some resources here. Let's put an aloe plant as well. Yep. I'll put a couple of them. It's not a renewable resource, but even when the plant is picked, like the flower is picked, the rest of the plant will remain, and it's a nice structural plant. We could add some driftwood. I'll add them next to the trees. So the players may come along and deforest their own island. If they do that, well, that's up to the player. I personally will go and chop down the trees on somebody else's island, but it is something you need to remember. So when you are putting things in, the player might just say, oh, I'll chop down all of the trees, and then everything looks a bit barren. Even though you've handcrafted everything to look nice and natural, the player might just chop all your work down, and then the island looks a little bit bare. So you put in resources so that it dissuades them from doing that, or if you put in trees they can't chop down, you keep that nice look. So yes, they could just take the trees out of here, and we would be left with the ficus trees. What we can do is go back to the cog, change the time of day. Okay. So it's more like 10 o'clock in the morning, and see what have we done. Actually, it's looking pretty decent. So we have the little islands. You can run straight through there, because before it was a little cove, which meant the player would naturally want to run along the edge here, which is fine. But now that we've kept the water, we can run through there. We've added a bunch of extra resources. We have addressed the beach itself. Well, it was completely flat along here, and now it's not. And the damp sand now reaches up towards the pond, but crucially doesn't connect with the pond, which is excellent. So players can still use the tree to jump up onto the wing. Hopefully they can jump up over the top of the fuselage. It's one of those things that we're going to have to check, just to make sure the player can do that. Maybe they'll be able to jump on the engine cowl and then onto the top. I don't know. We'll have to put that in game and check. But they should also be able to run down the spine of the aircraft, jump into the... Let's just change that. Jump into the pond. And then once they're out of the pond, they'll be greeted with the sight of the mangroves. Now we are going to need to adjust the headlands themselves, but that's probably for another time. Good. Well, a nice little mangrove swamp, and it is open and airy. It's not too dense. We've only got 5 islands in there. They're all different shapes and sizes, different amounts of trees on them. I'm thinking that looks good. So I'm going to leave it there for the time being. If you like these videos, definitely leave a little like, leave a subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. If you want notifications, dingle the bingle. If you don't want notifications, don't click the bell. And I tell you what, I'll catch you next time.